Now, around 2/3 of Australians say they believe in God or have some conception of a type of God, a higher power, but fewer than 1 in 10 attend church weekly. So, what is the reason for that? What is the future of religion in this country?
Joining us to discuss this issue is social researcher and author of the new book Beyond Belief, Hugh Mackay, Reverend Justin Moffat, and the Anglican Parish of Churchill, and President of the Atheist Foundation of Australia, Kylie Sturgis. Good morning to you all. Now, first to you, Hugh. Why do you think there is this gap between the number of people who say they're believers and the number of people who attend church weekly?
Yes, good morning, Angela. It's even more peculiar than you've said, because in the last census, 61% of Australians identified as Christian. But I think there are some fairly clear reasons why most of the people who say that they're believers in some higher power, or specifically Christian, are not attending church. One is that we live in an era when all institutions are suffering declining respect, whether it's politics, banks, the media, trade unions, and the church is right in there. Never been more opprobrium attached to the church as an institution than there is now. Corruption in general, but very specifically recently, of course, all the child sexual abuse scandals. So that turns people off the idea of institutional religion. And then you've got all the ex-churchgoers who say they left because they found it a bit boring. They found it not relevant to their lives, especially women saying, you know, has the church not grasped that there's been a gender revolution? And also we've got the context of a culture that has become very materialistic and very individualistic, the so-called me culture, and all those messages about it's all about me, my wealth, my prosperity, etc. That's all antithetical to the messages of religion. Would you rather be rich and happy or kind and compassionate? And really the church has been losing that contest.
Interestingly, you know, while church attendance is going through the floor, enrolment in church schools is going through the roof. So people seem to still want those Christian values instilled in their children, but they just don't seem to be trusting the church to be the one to do that. Justin, can I bring you in here? You know, why do you think that churches are failing to attract attendance? And importantly, what do you think the effects of that are?
Yeah, right. Good morning. It's great to be here. Firstly, Hugh, I'd like to say I really enjoyed your book. I think readers will find it very winsome and thoughtful. On one level, I'm the wrong person to ask. You better ask a gentleman called Chris. Chris is one of the last holdouts in Millers Point, where I live and where my churches are.
Yep.
He is in his 60s or 70s. He likes to drink beer at the Hero of Waterloo. But he doesn't share my beliefs about Jesus Christ. He doesn't believe in the life, death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. He doesn't believe in divine grace. He doesn't believe in substantial hope. He doesn't believe in forgiveness of sins. He doesn't believe in the sacrificial love as it comes from Jesus Christ. He doesn't share those beliefs. But he says to me, I want you to be the one to take... He's well, but he says, I want you to be the one to take my funeral. So he's not willing to step into a church week by week, but he does at the same time still want to be a part of the church in some sense at that important moment of his life. So why don't they come? Well, on one level, it's better to ask the 60% rather than me. I'm in the 10% who do believe in Jesus Christ. But I think there are historic reasons and personal reasons. There are as many reasons as there are people who don't go to church. But there are historic reasons. People like Chris and that generation stopped going to church. They wanted the values, and I'm sure Hugh would agree with this, they wanted the values of Christianity, but not the form. The next generation, my generation, Generation Y and X, sort of learned the values, but not the form, and then we just sort of stopped going to church altogether, not seeing it as relevant. But there are also personal reasons. I think there are people who've been hurt. There are people who struggle with doubt. There are people who just want to do their own thing, the kind of individualism of which Christianity and church are sort of antidote, Hugh, in some ways. But they find it hard. And we want to be of much help to people as possible. Most churches are. They have open doors.
Kylie, let's bring you in here. You're the president of the Atheist Foundation of Australia. But in a former life, you were a religious education teacher for a number of religious schools. What happened there? Did you have a reverse road to Damascus moment?
I've always been interested in religion. I've always been interested in communities, and I'm a great believer in promoting philosophy and philosophy in schools. I think both Hugh and Justin bring in great points. We have to find out more about the mindset of people, and one of the ways of doing that is going out into religious schools, going out into the community and talking to people. The upcoming census, for example, is a great opportunity to find out whether or not people are indeed falling out with religion and maybe considering themselves no religion. You don't have to be an atheist in order to say that there's no religion out there. You're just saying that maybe there needs to be a harder look at what's really going on in society and just how much benefit churches and established religion are getting. And should we be making more of a balance?
It's interesting, Kylie, quite regularly you see data around the fact that people who do have a strong belief in some higher power fare better on sort of health and well-being scores. For an atheist, where do you transfer your that human desire to truly believe in something and be a part of something beyond the physical?
I think there's many people out there who might transfer that enjoyment and community to other activities such as sport. We can see people, for example, doing a charity ride this morning in order to bond together because they care about a cure. We know that people often put their faith into new age beliefs. I think Belle Gibson is a good example of how maybe that doesn't work out so well all of the time. But there's plenty of opportunities for people to find philosophical meaning in their lives. We go to events, we go to philosophical gatherings, we read books like Hugh's great one, for example, and try to seek meaning in a community, in a caring community, rather than just going to a church.
Hugh, we've been talking. Thanks, Kylie. We've been talking about this strictly through the lens of the Christian churches here. How is attendance faring? For other religions in Australia? I mean, are people still attending synagogue? Are people still attending mosque in the same way they were?
Yes, and attendance levels tend to be higher proportionately in non-Christian religions, but they are, of course, in Australia, a tiny proportion of our population. We talk about the growing presence of Islam in Australia. Well, it's 2% of the population. The fastest growing religion in Australia is actually Hinduism, which is still smaller than Islam, but growing faster. And there are more Buddhists than there are either Muslims or Hindus. And Buddhists are not great attenders at temples, but certainly Muslims, Hindus and Jews, 0.5% of the population, tend to be more faithful to the business of attending than Christians do.
Yeah. That's very interesting stuff. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. We can really go on all morning about this. I find it fascinating. But thanks very much for all of your input and insight on that. It's an interesting discussion.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the reason we have to move on